The entire rap game has always centered around every man for himself. I mean, ever since Wu Tang and NWA fell out, we can all collectively agree that most rap collectives work better apart than together, right? Well, yes, but there are those few moments where you bring two MCs together to absolutely slay their competition on wax. Even though we never have guessed that these artists would work together, we're thanking the musical gods every day that they did. Here are the 8 most bizarre but greatest rap collabs ever. Number 8. November Has Come, Gorillaz with MF Doom. While Damon Albarn has always come from a rock background, the music of Gorillaz always seemed indebted to hip-hop, though most old school fans would recognize De La Soul's incredible take on Feel Good Inc. Doom is absolutely savage on November Has Come. Since Albarn was already a fan of Doom's style before this point, this beat really sounds like the one gangly guy from Blur actually did his homework for the Doom persona. The beat is pretty much in Doom's wheelhouse too, with the backbeat sounding like it came off of some old dusty junkyard that he tricked out to be his own villainous lair. Remember, this is fresh off of Mad Villainy, which meant that Doom was already used to this kind of delivery, even sprinkling in a line about others asking him for closure. It's a bold statement to announce that you killed it before the song is even finished, but if you're the almighty villain of hip-hop, you can do whatever the hell you want. Number 7. Lost in the World, Ye and Bon Iver. Since it's been out in the world for over a decade now, it's safe to say that Kanye really had a classic on his hands with My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. Although hip-hop's throne was already at his doorstep, the real magic came from odd movements like Lost in the World, sprinkled throughout the mix. Compared to what Ye was rocking on albums like Graduation, the use of Bon Iver's auto-tune folk rock voice seemed like the polar opposite of Ye's strength. When we put Justin Vernon's verse on, though, he turned that soft-spoken voice into the greatest club sing-along of the modern age. Even when we got the reruns of this shtick on over half of Yeezus, Ye still was pulling at his sound even more, making his voice distort and using it more like an instrument instead of just letting his words flow. For every reason why this shouldn't work, it's just another reason why Kanye is a mad scientist in his production style. Number 6. Triple X, Kendrick Lamar and U2. If the 90s have taught us anything, it's that the combination of rap and rock can be the epitome of cringe when you put them together in the wrong way. Even the new metal fans have to be honest. You can only listen to so much Limp Bizkit before you give up on music altogether. So you think Kendrick would know better than to include a fossil 80s rock band on his radar, right? Wrong. Midway through Damn, both Bono and The Edge of U2 show up to deliver a strange mix of spoken word and melody that sounds like some preacher chanting in some post-apocalyptic world. Since Kendrick has a tight attention to detail though, my man hasn't made a bad album to date and he's not about to start now, the whole thing feels like you're floating above the clouds as you dig deep into Kendrick's mind. Even though most of the song tends to be a dissection of Kendrick's relationship with the people around him, these little pieces of music's past might just be the reason why we can refer to him as Pulitzer Prize winning K-Dot these days. Number 5. Renegade, Jay-Z and Eminem. There's always gonna be a healthy amount of competition that goes into making a great collab track. While you might just want to try and make the track better at the end of the day, you're still going up against some of the greatest MCs that you know and trying to beat them at their own game. Though there's usually a clear winner. Renegade may be the one song where Jay got one up on his own track. Even though most of the blueprint features Jay-Z claiming his throne at the top of the hip-hop food chain, it doesn't really pick up until Eminem drops his verse in the middle of the track. Considering this was the first time we got to see M spit on a verse since the Marshall Mathers LP, this is exactly the streetwise punk that we had come to expect at this point, going in hard on everyone who has ever tried to deny his presence in the past. Come to think of it, you can definitely see a few more parallels between Jay and M throughout most of these tracks. Both came from less than nothing and are now staking their claim as the future kings of the hip-hop game. Except, M may have been just a bit more hungry for the gold ring than Jay was at this point. Number 4, Levitating, Dua Lipa and DaBaby. For any self-respecting hip-hop artist, you've pretty much lost your credibility the minute you decide to collaborate with a pop star. After all, once you stop caring about your flow and decide to count your money instead, you can't pretend to act like the most dangerous player in the game anymore. If there was a line between good and bad selling out, though, you can find it directly on Levitating by Dua Lipa. Although DaBaby doesn't really seem like he belongs in the same area code as a disco song, the way this beat melts into your brain works wonders for his flow. Almost like he's in a revamped version of a disco joint, putting his gangster expertise into the equation. Also, when has DaBaby been known to be subtle? Absolutely none of the time, so why the hell not lay some of his greatest bars on wax on a track that's this forceful? Especially when the end result bangs this hard. Maybe we do need some of our heavy hitters to not take themselves as seriously from time to time. Number 3, Fourth Dimension, Kids See Ghosts. Rap fans have been clamoring for the real Kid Cudi-Kanye collab for years now. Since Ye had already made Cudi his unofficial protege after working with him on the 808s and Heartbreak and My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, fans only had one question: when is the collab record coming? Although the fallout between Cudi and Ye after Yeezus looked pretty ugly, no one was prepared for what came on Kids See Ghosts. Working off each other in the best way possible, Fourth Dimension is Ye in his production prime, throwing together an old swing band sample from the 20s and turning it into one of the most psychedelic sounds that the hip-hop world has ever heard. From the singing perspective too, Cudi hasn't sounded this on point since Man on the Moon, something most people thought was gone after the massive fall on Speeding Bullet to Heaven. With both men coming off of problems with mental illness, this sounds like they took every single aspect of their psyche and put it on display for the world to see. It might not be the most pleasant thing to listen to all the time, but Fourth Dimension is not meant to just entertain. It's trying to show you stuff that you didn't even know you were capable of seeing yet. Number 2, Control, Big Sean featuring Kendrick Lamar. Every generation of rappers have those few verses that have become iconic. The 80s might call something like Straight Outta Compton a classic, and the 90s have Biggie and Tupac cuts to quote for the rest of eternity. If there's a new school equivalent of those though, it would have to be Kendrick's verse of Big Sean's Control. Even though Sean might not have been quite ready for Kendrick to spit his fire like this just yet, this is probably the one verse that was responsible for making Kendrick the living legend he is today. Long before To Pimp a Butterfly flipped everyone on their head, Kendrick goes on a tirade in the middle of this song where he calls every single giant that has come before him from Biggie to Nas and threatens to absolutely slay his competition and reach for the hip-hop throne himself. Big Sean does eventually come back in, but who the hell cares when you just had that little nugget of brilliance that passed by without you even realizing it? For all hip-hop heads listening, Kendrick was never going to be the same after this one verse. He may have started off as some smart kid coming out of the streets of Compton, but in just a minute of verse, we were now looking at one of the greatest rappers who have ever walked the earth. Number 1, Solo Reprise, Frank Ocean featuring Andre 3000. Out of all the game-changing albums of the past few years, Blonde by Frank Ocean has to be one of the weirdest shifts we've ever seen. Even though Ocean had already proved himself as a master of R&B, this was something a lot more emotional and felt like it was coming from a genuine place rather than the ballad-heavy stuff that we had known him for. How emotional, you may ask? Well, even the reprise of a song could be considered the greatest of all time. Bringing Andre 3000 back into the rap game after years of silence. Solo Reprise is Andre spitting some of the greatest one-liners of his career, going as far as to outshine Frank on his own album. It's not like Frank wasn't aware that he had something great on his hands either. Considering that most of this track is just a smooth background beat while Andre gets busy annihilating every word he hits on the verses, this goes beyond just the random guest verse though. This might be one of the few things that Andre has done that might be better than what he did when he was in Outkast. I know, sacrilegious, right? Yeah, then again, when have you seen him make this much of an impression on a track since B.O.B.? Not many. Andre could have easily just traded bars with Frank throughout this little interlude in between Frank's heartache, but putting him against the spare production of this record is just the peanut butter and chocolate combination that most rap fans didn't even realize they needed until they heard it in full. For the love of God, Andre, please come back to hip-hop. We need you, boy. But that's all we got right now. What are some other rap collabs that you thought were really weird? Leave it down in the comments and let everybody know. And don't forget to check out all the latest in rap and hip-hop right here on RIZZLE.